Welcome to my channel, The Binge Eating Therapist. I'm Sarah, former binge eater turned psychotherapist. And chances are if you struggle with binge eating, if I were to really oversimplify it, which you know I don't enjoy doing, the reason that you struggle with binge eating is because you experience urges to binge. So for whatever reason, at times you have this desire for food that feels big and overwhelming and leads to eating in an out of control way. And these urges can seem so powerful and seem to defy rationality. I can remember when that binge urge came, it would be like nothing mattered except going and getting the food. It really felt like a life or death decision. And I know it doesn't make sense. And I know it didn't make sense. And afterwards, I think, why did I do that again? And the only way I could justify that tension in my mind between how strong this desire was to eat versus I don't want to be doing this behavior was to say to myself, one last time, and tomorrow I'll do better. Tomorrow I will not allow myself to give in to the binge urge. But of course, that cycle just went round and round. And I'm not suggesting for 1 second that you fight with binge urges. That, I think, is a mistake that everybody makes. As Carl Jung famously said, what we resist persists. So the more we push back against binge urges, the more they push back too, and the stronger they can get. So first of all, I want to just have a think about why these urges seem so powerful when it doesn't seem to make sense. Binge eating has many strands to it. You've got your psychology, emotions, social pressures. You've got your biology, your neurology. All of this stuff kind of combines together to create this perfect storm that then turns into binge eating. One of the reasons why this urge feels as strong as it does is it is connected to our primal drive to eat. So regardless of whether you are actually hungry or not, some binge urges come from genuine hunger. Some come from anticipation of restriction, some come from habit, and some come from other emotional or traumatic reasons. Whatever the reason, like your appetite is being triggered. And our appetite, our drive to eat, is a life or death drive that we need to have, which is why they can feel like life or death decisions. So the feeling comes, and then the brain anticipates and goes, I know this is food. We need food. We need food. The only thing that gets rid of this feeling is eating. Or maybe more accurate to say the only thing that pushes this feeling away for a while is eating. And when you've been around the cycle enough times, the urge comes, there's this tension and this stress that comes along with it, and you eat and the tension is released. The brain is always trying to get us back into homeostasis, so it knows that food is going to at least biologically release some tension, even if it's going to create another type of tension because of all the guilt and shame that then gets triggered from the binge. Some of you will have had the experience where maybe for a week or a couple of weeks, maybe even longer, the urge to binge just isn't there. Like it goes away for a while and you get to experience that sweet taste of freedom and you think, why can't things be like this all the time? Or if you're anything like me, things are going to be like this all the time from now on, because when I hadn't had the urge for a while, I couldn't even remember what it felt like. And I'd say to myself, it doesn't matter if that urge comes back because I'm just not going to give in. But sure enough, at some point the urge would come back and it would get me and I'd be back in it before you know it. When that urge arrived, I genuinely had this feeling like I'd already messed up. I'd already blown it just because the urge had arrived. Because it came with such a sense of inevitability that there is only one way that this feeling ends. And I remember hearing at the time, if you don't give in to the urge, then it will go away. And in that moment, I would try and say that to myself, and my brain would go, well, it might go away, but it's only going to come back again. So what's the point if it keeps coming back and it keeps coming back? And this, I think, is some of the confusion in binge eating recovery. So some people who are helping people to recover from binge eating are adamant that if you have an urge to binge, it's coming from a primal hunger place. It's a response to restriction. So therefore, you should always honor it. And then you get the other school of thinking that's saying, no, those binge urges, they're just habits. They're just emotional cues. They're food cues. And what you need to do is to learn how to ride out those binge urges so that they can't control you. And the challenge for you is there isn't anybody outside of you who can tell you which is which for you. I have definitely experienced both. And now in my position for where I am today, I can tell the difference between the two. They feel slightly different to me. What does seem to be the case is though if your binge urges are being triggered from restriction, deprivation, or perceived restriction and deprivation, they will keep coming back. And if they don't get honored, they will keep coming back stronger and more frequently. However, if your urges are more habit related or more emotionally related, and I say that cautiously because I mean like as a reaction to something that's happened, as opposed to an ongoing emotional or mood state like depression or anxiety. So if it's emotional or habit, when you don't follow the binge urge through, then those urges get weaker and weaker. So restriction and deprivation, they get stronger and stronger when you dismiss them. But if it's habit, they get weaker and weaker. The challenge is when the urge comes, it comes with a sense of confusion, right? And it hijacks your thinking. Just like when we feel absolutely exhausted with tiredness, we can't think very clearly. Likewise, if you're feeling very stressed, that's also going to affect your thinking. And there's a certain stress that comes along with making food decisions when you've struggled with disordered eating. And that stress is going to really interfere with your processing. Processing. I've been spending too much time with Steph. I'm British. It's processing. Speaking of Steph, my podcast co-host, we are doing an event in Dublin in September, on Saturday the 16th of September, in person. If you're in Dublin or able to travel to Dublin and you want to come and hang out in person, I'll put some stuff below and you can have a look at what that's all about. I probably could have done a better plug than that, but I don't want to take up too much time in this video talking about other things. Anyway, back to urges. When we're talking about restriction urges and habit urges, this is why we have to deal with the restriction element first, because this is the one where they'll just keep coming back and coming back if you try to dismiss them. Then once you are feeding yourself regularly and eating foods that you enjoy and getting rid of some of this moralization and shedding off these diet culture messages, then you can see what's left in terms of your relationship with food and understanding those urges. And if you want to know more, like getting into more detail about how to deal with urges, we've got 2 episodes on the podcast about it, episodes 25 and 77 of the Life After Diets podcast. You can also check out these videos for some more practical tips about what to do with urges. And when you're watching this, I will probably be in sunny Greece, so I will see you on the other side.